Safety first. Please start the podcast before driving and do not interact with your phone while operating your vehicle.
Welcome to Impactful Dialogues, an Ecolab podcast that elevates inclusion, mindfulness, purpose, awareness, collaboration, and trust through executive conversations. I'm your host, Senior Vice President of Global Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Dexter Davis. Welcome to the 5th episode of Impactful Dialogues. Today we'll be speaking with Rich Sponder to discuss the role of allyship in promoting understanding and advocacy for underrepresented groups and its impact in his new role as executive sponsor of our Pride Employee Resource Group. Rich, thanks a lot for joining us today.
Thank you.
And I don't know if you all know, Rich is our Senior Vice President of HR for our global supply chain. It's been at Ecolab for a while, quite a few years, I believe, and in a numerous of different opportunities here. I would say, Rich, before we jump into it, being here for a couple of years and having an opportunity to visit some of our manufacturing plants with you, boy, a deep experience and understanding of our supply chain and the different folks who work in the supply chain, from our frontline associates to our executives. And it was just really an eye-opening to me how important it is to be able to navigate and work with different work groups within, especially our supply chain, but within the organization. What is your approach to that, and how did you get so good at doing that?
Oh, thank you. I love being out in the field, and I think it's my role and the role of my team to really advocate for our frontline associates. And the closer we can be to the front line, the better we can kind of understand the challenges, what's working and what's not working, and advocate on their behalf. We encounter a lot of different perspectives when we're out, and so getting that feedback is really important. The more we can put ourselves in their shoes and understand, what they need, I think we can better advocate on their behalf.
100% agree. And, I'm thinking about those visits we had. And I remember asking you a question, I think really speaks to that. Obviously, we're both in human resources, understand the value of human resources, because it really, the folks are really close to our people, which are our most important asset in any organization. But I remember asking you a question. I said, so how do you tell if somebody's a really good HR professional in the plant? I'd love you to share a little bit of what you said there.
Yeah, definitely. I think I probably told you that a good HR partner in the plant is one who's spending a ton of time out on the floor, that really knows their people, knows what's going on, and is out on the floor of the plant or the warehouse more often than they're in their office or in meetings, right? It's really that interaction one-on-one with the team that matters most.
And what else you said in that too was really like to really know the person, like, know with their kids or have a sporting event, and really knew when or their husband and their spouses, all those kind of things. And I thought that was really apparent. And then I remember going to those plants, and when you had those HR professionals who were there, who knew the people, you just saw the operations go better. I mean, because you're bringing a lot of folks with different perspectives, but when you know your people and you understand your people, that really is what creates that inclusive environment, and truly is what inclusive leadership is. So I thought that was just a good example of how that is and how important that is. And I think you picked up on that right away when we're out there. Hey, that's one way you can pick that up. And it's a really tangible way for us to see that, because sometimes when we talk about inclusive leadership and being inclusive, it's simple. A lot of times is really getting to know your people and knowing yourself, and create an environment where people could be their best. So I thought that was a good example in the supply chain of how you were able to pick that up just from, I'm sure, for all your years of being in supply chain, of how important that is.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's one of my favorite things to do. Just a few weeks ago, I had the chance to get out to a few more sites and to walk around with the team, with the site leader, with the HR partner, and just talk to our frontline and ask what's going on, what's frustrating you today, and hearing how we can provide support. It's one of the most rewarding parts of my job, and I love that my team loves to get out as well and do the same thing.
When you say your team, you love your team that gets out and do the same thing. How would you say your approach is to really kind of, we're talking about that inclusive leadership? How do you get to know your team?
Yeah, I think we can always do better, and I remind myself that I can always be doing better. But I like to know something about the individuals on the team. They are first, they're amazing, and their jobs are really, really challenging. But I think who they are as individuals is what makes them great at what they do. And so I want to know about that. I want to know not just what their interests and challenges are inside of work, but outside of work as well. I want to hear, what they're faced with. What do they need from us in terms of balance? What are their passions outside of work that maybe they can even bring to work and leverage? We've had some of our team members, for example, who are super passionate about, creating videos, and we've leveraged that to create some cool videos. So getting to know the team and who they are as individuals is super important.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say this just from my observation of you, and working with you. I think you have the ability to build trust quickly with people. Why do you think that is?
I hope that I'm transparent. I like to think that I'm transparent. Maybe sometimes I'm too transparent, and maybe say too much. But I've always, I think, erred on the side of transparency, and I'm not afraid to share the bad news either. I see a lot of leaders who seem afraid to share the bad news or kind of put a positive spin on everything. And sometimes we have to talk about the tough stuff and have the tough conversations. I think that helps to build trust because it then gives us the opportunity to talk to our teams and ask for their reactions, what they think the solutions are as well. But I think transparency is really important in sharing what's going really, really well, what's going great, but then also, talking about the tough topics as well.
Good. In 2015, you transitioned to talent development training within our global supply chain function and have since remained in HR and talent. What motivated your move to this segment of the function, and how was your early career shape your leadership approach and people-focused aspects of supply chain management?
Wow, going back almost 10 years. So around that time, I had an opportunity. I was leading the logistics work stream for an integration that we were doing. And my colleague Joellen Vaninga was leading the whole work stream for that integration for HR. I was so incredibly impressed by how we treated our people during that process. It was a really big challenge. It was a big integration. We were integrating what had been a fierce competitor, and that integration, just the way we treated our people, capturing their hearts and minds, was really kind of my inspiration as that project came to an end and I was thinking about what do I want to do next. That really stayed with me, and for me prompted my move into or my desire to move into the HR space. I think an L&D role was a great place for me to do that. We were focused on leadership development at the time at all levels. This was prior to some of the great programs we have in place. So we were building programs for our frontline leaders, for example, which I think is one of the most critical leadership roles we have in the supply chain. We were even building leadership development for our executive leaders. And so it was a great place for me to enter into the HR function, do work that was unbelievably meaningful for me with an organization I was already quite familiar with.
Yeah, you mentioned like leadership development and that piece of it. And what's been your experience throughout your time, especially in supply chain, of really understanding how to talk about leadership development based on the audience? Like leadership development, I'm guessing of the frontline supervisor is important, and that's something, but also your most senior supply chain executive. What would you say is a common thread when you think of leadership development, no matter what the level?
Yeah, I would say probably the idea of servant leadership. So TPM is our continuous improvement philosophy in supply chain.
What is TPM?
TPM is total productive management. And there are a number of different pillars that make up TPM. But there's some foundational things that we put in place first. And one of those foundational items is what we call HPO, high performing organization. A critical component of that is the idea of servant leadership. So much so that we even encourage on our org charts for those to be flipped and to show the site leader actually at the bottom of the org chart. This idea that I am here for you. What do you need from me to be successful? And I think that servant leader mindset really permeates through all levels of leadership in our organization. But I would say that's definitely the common theme.
And from that servant leadership and like the high performing organization, what do you think is a key foundation for really to have that, to create the kind of environment where that can really happen?
I think you've got to be open-minded. You've got to listen more than you speak. You have to be open to differing perspectives, the idea of curiosity, knowing that great answers can come from anywhere in the organization. For example, sometimes it's our frontline operators that have the best ideas on how to drive improvement in how our equipment's running. So the idea is that those ideas can come from anywhere, and the openness to creating diverse teams and creating inclusive environments where those diverse teams can really thrive. We have an incredibly diverse population in the front line, and that's a benefit to us. That is a tremendous benefit, but we have to have the inclusive and respectful work environment to go along with the diverse teams, or we're not going to get the benefits of having such diverse teams.
Absolutely. And I think you speak to that so well, how important that is. And I think about the work you and I did when we're really working on how do you embed the DEI into the TPM, which I think has been really something that's been really cool. And I think what also is really good about it, you're putting to the point where you have the servant leadership, where the plant manager's on top and everybody's bottom. Those teams that were developing the plants that really focus on engagement and inclusion are folks from all different parts and different levels within the organization. And I think that's just a good example of really putting the ideology into practice. And I think that's something to be proud of. I think supply chain is moving in the right direction when it comes to that.
Absolutely. We've been looking, I think, for a while on the right way to reach our front line with all of the great work that we're doing as an organization around DE&I. We heard when we traveled together, right, that for a lot of our frontline associates, what they see as Ecolab is the site that they're in. And there's so much that we do as an organization. How do we bring that to them, especially in the space of DE&I? And so I think the engagement and inclusion teams, I'm just so thrilled with. I mean, every day I'm seeing pictures and events and things happening in the front line from our teams, and it's been phenomenal work.
I would agree, and I think it speaks to making sure everybody has a voice here.
Absolutely.
And that we really care and want to hear that. I think that's just so important for, I think, all of us as leaders to remember that each person, even the folk sometimes the closest to the customer or the closest to the people creating the product for the customer, we got to make sure those voices are heard too. So good.
Yeah.
All right. As a key participant in our Pride Employee Resource Group, which advocates for LGBTQ+ community, both inside and beyond our four walls, you've recently become an executive sponsor. Could you share your experience with Pride and what prompted you to accept the role of executive sponsor?
Yeah, definitely. Well, first, Pride is doing some absolutely amazing things, really exciting things. I was part of the Chicagoland chapter as a co-lead, and when I relocated to the Twin Cities here for my role, I missed that. I missed that involvement. Whether it's the resources that Pride is working on to help talent acquisition, working toward putting some best-in-class practices in place when it comes to gender transition in the workplace in North America, the Ask Me Anything events that Pride does, just the educational events, the community involvement. There's so much happening within Pride that's really innovative and exciting. So that was a main reason for me wanting to take this role. I would say there's a very personal component to me as well. Back when I was still part of the Energy Services division, I was asked to take on a Pride leadership role, and I said no at the time. And I said no because I wasn't comfortable being my whole self at work. And I always regretted that decision a bit, but I was scared at the time. And over the last couple of years, that's really changed a lot. And thinking back to last year during the Pride Parade, when I was walking in the parade, I had my husband there with me. It was a really great time, super impactful. And it didn't hit me until like a month or so later when I was at the ERG Summit, and a slide came on the screen and there was a picture from the Pride Parade. And I thought, whoa, there's me. There's my husband in an Ecolab shirt. There's one of my managers. There's our CEO. There's some of my great friends. We're all walking together. And I was thinking back how it wasn't that long ago that I wouldn't have even been talking about my life outside of work. And I thought about how much energy we put into either not being ourselves or hiding ourselves. And it's energy we can spend doing such better things, but it takes a lot of energy to kind of hide who you are. And I think the personal reasons for me wanting to do this, Pride has a great membership. A lot of our membership are allies, and we need allies. Allies have such an important role in the process. I also want to make sure, though, that our LGBTQ plus associates feel comfortable being themselves at work. I know what that feels like to have to either hide who you are or not share really important parts of your life with people you really care about at work. And if there's something I can do to help more Ecolab associates feel more comfortable being themselves at work, then that's the way in which I want to contribute.
That's awesome. And that, like you're saying, speaks to all the voices and really being able to feel confident being your authentic self to work. And it's our job as leaders to create that environment here. And I think you know how important the executive sponsor role is in leading these ERGs to make sure that we stay on top of things and make sure we're clearly articulating the needs for all of our associates. And this is totally off script question I have for you too, but given all the backlash around DEI and what it means and all the stuff you hear in the news, some places stuff too, why is it so important, even more so, that we as an organization stay focused on diversity and inclusion, especially, let's think of as an executive sponsor for Pride? You saying those words mean a lot, especially in this time of your story. Why is it so important that we stay focused on the importance of creating that environment where all of our associates, everybody, feels like they could be their authentic self at work?
Yeah, I really don't understand the backlash to DE&I. I don't know how you can't see all of the great aspects of DE&I. I don't know anyone who wouldn't want someone to be able to come to work and be their whole selves. And that's ultimately what it's about. I think there's a lot of fear of the unknown in the backlash. And you know, to that I say, be curious, ask some questions. I think there's fear of making mistakes. So if we just don't talk about these things, nobody will make mistakes. Everything will be fine. But I've seen the tremendous work that a diverse team that has an inclusive environment can do. There are so many compelling reasons to help our diverse teams thrive. I really struggle with all of the backlash, and the backlash comes from a place of, I think, fear and just a lack of understanding of what DE&I really is. Yeah. It's about creating a respectful workplace where everyone can devote their energy to, you know, things like their jobs, their families, their interests, versus having to hide parts of themselves.
Absolutely. And I think that speaks to also like how all of our associates, not just the diverse associates, play a role in creating that culture where we can do that. And I think more and more, the more you talk about your diversity, equity, inclusion strategies as inclusive of all, and that we all play a piece of it, there's no reason why you can't make an impact on it. And I think it's also demystifying. If you said it like there's fears of this, fears of that, when really at the whole, it's really how do you create an environment where people can really be their authentic selves? And then that authentic self creates opportunities for people to reach their potential, which also, by the way, means better business result because everybody's engaged and everybody's moving forward. So It's something that's there from an understanding the right thing to do, but also there's great business value in what we're doing. And if you ask somebody, have they ever understood or ever been in a situation where they felt left out, you'll hear answers from anybody that know what that feels like. So creating environments where people don't feel left out and feel like they belong, it just makes sense, like I said, from a heart perspective, but it makes sense from a head perspective because people perform better, diverse teams perform better. So I'm glad to be at a company that we're staying true to that and really being clear that that's something that's important for us, that really aligns with our purpose and our values. So appreciate you taking a step up this leadership, being executive sponsor, because it's such a key role that our executives are playing a piece in this. And I appreciate your transparency as always and talking about your story as well.
Thank you.
All right. So we're coming close to June, and Pride Month is really coming in. You mentioned the Pride Parade that Eagle Eye has been sponsored in the Twin Cities, and how energizing it's been. I've been lucky enough to go to the last two parades, and that really just shows how the importance of that and how important it is for our organization. But for this month, the theme is Pride is for everyone, emphasizing that we empower all associates to bring their entire selves and ideas to the table, with allyship creating connections that nurture an inclusive culture that supports innovation and creativity. As part of your role in Pride, how can individuals become allies for the LGBTQ+ community?
That role of ally is so incredibly important. I'm touched that such a heavy population of our Pride membership are allies. If I didn't have allies, allies were critical to me being able to talk more about myself and share things about my life. And there are days I still hear those voices in my mind telling me, don't say that, don't share that. But it's gotten a lot easier, and it's thanks to the allies. So I think that allyship aspect is incredibly important, and I like that we've got to focus on that this year. I mentioned earlier that concept of curiosity. I think it's okay to ask questions. I think, moving from kind of a place of judgment to a place of curiosity, asking questions, seeking additional perspectives, that's the way to become an ally for someone in the LGBTQ+ population or any other marginalized group. It's show some curiosity. So many of the Pride members that I've gotten to know are there because of family members, friends who are part of the community. And so they're showing their support by being part of the Pride ERG. And so I think the more allies, the better. And it's just going to continue to create that safe, loving, and open space for members of our community to continue to feel comfortable at work.
Good. And what would be one tip you would give all Pride allies here at Eagle Eye? Because sometimes people say they want to be an ally, but don't really know what that means. So what is one thing, action, you could say somebody can do they want to be an ally?
I would say, and this is a tough one, but I think it's a powerful one. Speak up when you hear or see something that is that's not right, that is not right. I had a conversation with someone recently who was really impacted by something that was said in a meeting, and nobody spoke up. That's really hard to do. I fully appreciate how hard that can be to be the one that speaks up. And there are a lot of things you can do as an ally. You can go and learn and do research, and you can provide a safe space. But I think I want to challenge allies to do some of the more difficult things, and that's speak up when you hear something or see something. It's incredibly hard to do, but it's probably the thing that will have the greatest impact for the person you're an ally to.
And you're right, and that goes beyond just Pride. That's in allyship in general. And I think it's easier to say I'm an ally than sometimes it's to be an ally. And I think that's a good example of how you could be an ally, which is really powerful.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate the conversation, and thank you all for listening. Our next conversation will be with Adam Johnson, Senior Vice President of Enterprise Sales Institutional. We will discuss the power of knowing people in personal and professional relationships and how it fosters strong partnerships and positive work cultures.